I climbed into my husband's vehicle and spotted a tube of intimate lubricant tucked away in the glove box. I kept my mouth shut. Instead, I quietly swapped it out for some heavy-duty super glue. The fallout from that swap had our neighbors dialing emergency services to summon the fire crew. I'm thrilled you've joined me. If you're catching this on video, hit that like button, subscribe to my page, and drop a comment below letting me know from where you're tuning into my tale of payback. I'm curious about its reach. There I was, perched at the dining table in the kitchen. The quiet in our home hung heavy, like a dense mist at dawn. It was an intruder that had overstayed its welcome, turning routine into tension. The antique clock on the wall, an heirloom from my departed mom for our wedding, ticked away with an unyielding, blame-laced cadence. Every tick stabbed like evidence of an existence I now feared was nothing but a polished illusion. My spouse, Julian, had just come back from yet another of his endless work meals. He didn't just seem drained. He appeared tormented, burdened by a hidden truth too burdensome to carry alone. His features bore the marks of weariness and remorse, with fresh creases framing his eyes and lips that hadn't appeared before. He flung his coat onto the couch with a fatigue that rang false, undid his necktie like it was a trap he needed to flee, and flopped onto the mattress, the old frame creaking in protest beneath him, skipping his usual rinse-off entirely. A whiff of his pricey aftershave lingered, but it blended with an unfamiliar aroma, a cloying blossom scent that invaded like an uninvited declaration from a parallel existence he kept from me. Shortly after, his soft snores rumbled through the rooms, a noise that used to soothe me but now mocked like a taunt for the naive, a bedtime song for the duped. I rose silently, with the smooth, habitual poise of a partner married 4 decades, and set about straightening the clutter he'd scattered in the den, his coat, billfold, mobile, and outdated computer. The device's display remained lit, revealing a fresh message that shone like a dark portent. I knit my brows. Julian avoided emails like the plague. He'd always told me, "Juliet, this gadget nonsense is beyond me. A phone call does the trick." Yet here was one, staring back openly, a virtual specter from a reality he concealed. Driven by a grim urge that seemed both improper and essential, I tapped it open. The note was brief, just a few devastating phrases that cracked my foundation. "You were amazing this evening, Daddy." It ended with a crimson heart emoji, a token of warmth that sliced through me with icy precision. I went rigid, as if struck across the face. The screen turned into a harsh reflector of a reality I dreaded confronting. Daddy. That term reverberated in my thoughts. Who addressed him so, and with that cozy, loving vibe? My fingers shook as I scrolled for further hints. Nothing. Only an odd sender's address, a mess of random letters and symbols yielding zero insight, just escalating mysteries. A chill coursed over me, not from the chill in the air, but from a visceral, marrow-chilling terror. It was as if a draft seeped through a fissure in the walls of my world, exposing a hidden vault I'd never imagined. I peered toward the bedroom, watching Julian shift with a gurgling snort, his expression serene and restful, a jarring foil to the tempest churning within. My pulse raced erratically like a culprit's in the night. I hastily returned the phone, my grip unsteady enough to nearly fumble it away. I pressed on with the tidying, actions now automatic, devoid of life. Scooping up his soiled garments for the wash, I probed the trouser pockets and discovered a neatly folded note, fresh and stiff. A bill from an upscale grill in San Antonio, time-stamped from earlier that evening. My forehead creased. San Antonio. He'd claimed the rendezvous was with colleagues in Dallas. A sour chuckle slipped out. Julian loathed the trek to Dallas, but San Antonio held nostalgia for him, his mom's old home before her death, a place he'd frequently mentioned with fondness. Yet whom had he shared that meal with in San Antonio, all while feeding me fiction about Dallas? The slip indicated a duo dining, featuring a premium Cabernet Sauvignon bottle. the very vintage he'd gifted me on our 10th wedding milestone, unforgettable to this day, and entrees of filet alongside pasta. I strained to recall the last occasion Julian wined and dined me somewhere so elegant, perhaps a decade back, around the launch of my initial bakery. That evening lingered vividly. The soft glow of candles, his beaming pride, the cheers he raised to my triumph. Now that recollection twisted into fabrication, a washed-out snapshot in an album of betrayal. I pulled out my cell and with quiet, steely intent captured images of both the bill and the message. Denial clawed at me, yet the gut instinct of a spouse with 40 years under her belt is an ancient, unerring sense. Trouble brewed and uncovering it became imperative. My fingers quivered, fueled not merely by fury but by a profound, soul-shaking apprehension. I felt as though I teetered on the brink, perched on the brink of a precipice, ready to watch my whole world come crashing down. I headed to the garage. Julian's aging SUV still radiated heat, the atmosphere heavy with the odor of fuel, and a subtle, sugary cologne clinging to his garments. I swung open the door, a chill knot of apprehension twisting in my gut. Flicking on my flashlight, I scanned every nook around the driver's area. Nothing seemed amiss. Just a few scattered coins and an empty water bottle. Yet when I delved into the glove compartment on the passenger side, my fingertips encountered something slick and plastic. I extracted it, and my pulse nearly halted. A spent tube of personal lubricant, crusted remnants on the lid, a tacky, incriminating relic. I lingered in the shadowy garage, gazing at it like some filthy revelation, a solid symbol of my deepest suspicions. Julian and I hadn't shared intimacy for ages. He kept claiming exhaustion, that time had dimmed his passion. Then what purpose did this lubricant serve? The query reverberated through my thoughts, each word striking like a mallet against my brittle existence. I froze momentarily, yet my wits remained sharp, an innate drive for endurance surging. I returned it precisely to its spot. I cleaned my hands with a tissue, rubbing vigorously, as though the disloyalty might etch itself indelibly onto my flesh. I pressed on with the search, now more deliberate, more systematic. Beneath the rear seat, I uncovered wadded tissues drenched in a cloying floral aroma that belonged to no man, and certainly not my gentle, customary rose scent. The fragrance was foreign, brazen, a brazen declaration of unfaithfulness amid the serene confines of our garage. I snapped pictures of it all, the lubricant, the tissues, as if a photo could trap the aroma. I shut the vehicle and returned indoors, the burden of the discoveries weighing on me, denser than any load of blossoms I'd ever hauled. I settled at the kitchen table, my fingers shaking wildly as I grasped Julian's phone once more. At that moment, I was nearly convinced of his infidelity. I sifted through his texts, finding only professional exchanges, stark and barren, like a parched wasteland. His inbox stood vacant save for that peculiar email. I examined the sent and draft sections. Zilch. It all appeared excessively tidy, impeccably so, raising red flags of deliberate concealment, as if he'd scrubbed away every hint of his duplicity. A skilled deceiver, I reflected with acrid resentment. My anger had solidified into an icy boulder in my torso, and a fresh, riskier sentiment started to awaken inside, a craving for clarity, an urge to unmask the falsehood, regardless of the price. Come dawn the following day, as gentle rays seeped past the drapes, I was up, a specter haunting my home. Visions of the lubricant, the eatery bill, and that message kept churning in my brain, a toxic merry-go-round of uncertainty. I positioned myself in the kitchen, hands occupied, but thoughts in chaotic turmoil. I prepared a basic meal, a pair of sunny-side-up eggs, slices of bread, and a mug of robust dark brew, Julian's favorite. Sleep had eluded me through the night. Julian descended, appearing weary, locks disheveled, gaze unfocused. He took a seat, seized his mug, drank briefly, and left it half-consumed. Big conference on the agenda today. he murmured in a gravelly tone, a scripted excuse he'd deployed endlessly, avoiding my stare. Expect me back after dark. He excelled at this charade, I mused. The effortless fabrications, the offhand delivery, it sent shivers through my veins. I managed a forced grin and dip of the head, despite yearning to bellow. Where exactly? With who? Another trek to San Antonio. Instead, I restrained myself, fury smoldering quietly, and murmured, "Okay, stay safe." He rose, delivered a fleeting tap to my arm, a motion more obligatory than warm, and departed. The door clicked shut, enveloping the kitchen in quiet, and leaving me with a doubt swelling into an overwhelming conviction. I tidied the surface and scoured the plates individually, the routine's cadence offering a minor tether amid my emotional gale. Idle speculation wouldn't suffice. I required concrete proof, unyielding facts. I retrieved my cell and sought out Mrs. Miller's contact, an old acquaintance who'd aided me immensely at the bakery's launch. She'd mentioned a solid private eye versed in adultery probes. "Juliet, should the need arise, I'll share Thomas's details," she'd offered. "He's utterly confidential and trustworthy." I dismissed the idea back then, but circumstances left me no alternative. I punched in her digits, my tone quivering, every tone a throb of escalating dread. "Hello, Mrs. Miller. Could you connect me with Thomas? I require his services." She hesitated briefly, that interlude conveying depths, before responding. "Juliet, what's happened? Has Julian crossed a line?" I exhaled, reluctant to delve into particulars via call, my dignity wounded and tender. "I simply must uncover the reality. Will you assist?" Mrs. Miller, a lady of sparse speech, yet deep wisdom. I quickly approved the tuition and, only an hour afterward, got a text from Thomas suggesting we meet at midday in a cozy coffee spot in the city center. "Mrs. Roberts, no need to fret. I'll assist you," he messaged. It was brief, yet it offered a sliver of comfort amid the overwhelming lies. Like a rope thrown into turbulent waters. Right on time, I arrived at the cafe, a modest spot with battered oak tables and the rich smell of freshly brewed beans wafting through, a fragrance that once eased my soul but now seemed oddly out of place. I picked a quiet nook, blending into the shadows amid the brightness. Thomas entered, a compact fellow in his 40s, dressed in a plain azure button-up, his gaze deep and insightful, piercing beyond the obvious. I passed him a USB stick containing the snapshots from the previous evening, the odd email, the diner bill, the bottle of lotion, and a few tissues. "This is everything I've got," I murmured, my tone unsteady. I suspect my spouse might be unfaithful. The admission left a bitter residue. Thomas acknowledged it, scrolling through the pics on his device, his expression neutral, a mask of expertise concealing his inner musings. He jotted details in a compact ledger. "Mrs. Roberts, I get it. I'll begin tailing Mr. Roberts right away this evening. Rest easy. I'll update you promptly." I met his eyes, fighting the sting of tears. "Thank you," I whispered. "I only seek the reality, no matter how harsh." He inclined his head with a sympathetic glint, a spark of empathy shining through. "I'll give it my all. Head back and avoid stirring any doubts." I departed the cafe, weaving through the throng of people, yet an unfamiliar isolation gripped me, deeper than anything before. 4 decades of wedlock, a life erected on solid faith, now fracturing under my steps. I'd placed every ounce of confidence in Julian. He struck me as the devoted patriarch, the steady presence through every trial, my pillar, my foundation, and yet, there I was, engaging an outsider to shadow my partner. The twist stung like venom. It was as if I starred in a grim film, trapped in a plot I hadn't chosen. That evening, perched in the pastry shop amid the comforting whiff of rising dough and powdered grains, a reliable balm as I reviewed shipment records, my cell buzzed. A note from Thomas. I clicked it open, pulse racing wildly, veins thumping. The attachment showed Julian in his favored pale shirt, stepping into an upscale eatery, arm linked with a female companion. I magnified the shot, and time froze. It was Allison, my son's wife. Clad in a form-fitting ebony gown, bold cosmetics, vivid crimson on her lips, tresses cascading freely. They resembled lovers out for romance, not relatives by marriage. Leaning in close, bound by some hidden bond. I slumped in my seat, fingers quivering around the device. Allison. How could this be? At holiday meals, she and Julian kept their distance, exchanging few words. Now I saw it for the clever ruse it was, staged just for me. Thomas forwarded additional images. One captured them in a private booth, the setup aglow with tapers and blooms. Allison tilted toward him, beaming while Julian raised his drink to hers with an unusually soft expression. Staring at it, a vice tightened around my ribs. In all our 40 years, he'd never regarded me so, not even in our early days. Back when I was that vibrant San Diego lass with flowing locks and a beaming grin, his eyes held that pure devotion, a passion I assumed was eternal, now directed at her. Deep into the night, another clip came from Thomas. The timepiece indicated 2:01 a.m. I slipped on earbuds, desperate to contain the revelation, and hit start. My grip faltered, nearly fumbling the phone. The footage depicted Allison murmuring into Julian's ear, prompting his hearty chuckle, a laugh I'd seldom heard. Her tone was honeyed, her gaze alight beneath the dim glow. Soon they rose and exited, Julian gallantly swinging open the vehicle door for her, like a suitor to his beloved. I looped the recording repeatedly, a deliberate agony. With each view, it pierced deeper. Allison, whom I'd embraced as my child, guiding her in crafting our cherished custard dessert, and Julian, to whom I devoted my existence, forging our clan together. What betrayal unfolded in secret, away from Daniel's knowledge. The inquiries surged like a flood, on the verge of overwhelming me. I transferred every picture and the footage onto a drive, logging each element, timestamps, locations, even the venue's title. My movements were mechanical, though turmoil raged within. Denial clawed at me. I refused to accept that Julian and Allison could stoop to anything so vile, so CE, but the proof was staring me in the face, irrefutable, an overwhelming pile of facts. I lingered in the bakery surrounded by racks of tempting confections that carried an enticing aroma, yet my entire life seemed to be crumbling. Memories flooded back of the startup phase for the shop, when Julian assisted with hauling bags of flour, and we'd share chuckles in that modest workspace, our ambitions stretching endlessly. These days it all felt like a faded recollection, a charming illusion I'd clung to far too long. Come morning, I found myself in the bakery's compact kitchen, clutching an order sheet for a major downtown hotel. The familiar sense of dough and vanilla, which typically soothed me, rang hollow that day, offering no real solace. Right after I signed off on the shipment paperwork, my cell buzzed in my apron. I cleaned my palms and my stomach dropped upon spotting the text from the investigator. It was a simple line. "Mrs. Roberts, more proof is on its way to you." I drew in a steadying breath, striving for composure, though my fingers shook as I tapped to view it. Images popped up one after another. The initial one captured Julian in his standard gray top, exiting a legal firm close to the central square. Beside him strode Allison, clad in a neutral business outfit, her locks pulled into a sleek topknot, shielded by oversized shades that barely concealed her features, a feeble bid for discretion. They moved intimately side by side, not at all like relatives by marriage, but more resembling lovers. Their postures screamed of a secret connection. The following shot had them poised before a luxury hotel boasting shiny entrances and a gilded emblem. I magnified it, searching frantically for any clue to refute the scene, but found none. They appeared utterly at ease, seamlessly integrated into a life that excluded me. Next arrived a brief clip courtesy of Mr. Thomas, I hit play, and my pulse raced wildly, thumping like a wild rhythm in my chest, filmed from afar, yet sharp enough to discern Julian and Allison on the hotel's third-level terrace. His hand encircled her midsection, while she leaned against him, her flowing tresses swaying gently in the breeze. Then, like a dagger thrust, they exchanged a swift peck, making no effort to conceal it. Short as it was, that moment extinguished the final flicker of optimism I held. I scrutinized the footage second by second, every still carving further into my spirit, dragging me into a torturous spiral of despair. The drapes parted just a bit, and out dashed Allison to embrace Julian, her expression radiant with joy, like a smitten teenager. I collapsed into the seat, gripping the tabletop's rim to hold myself steady. Mr. Thomas added, "They booked the suite for the afternoon, too. Seems they're planning an overnight. I'll monitor the situation." I scanned his words repeatedly, my airway constricting as if gripped by an invisible vice. Only hours before, Julian had messaged me, "Juliet, I won't make it back this evening. Meeting a prospective client from elsewhere. Take it easy." His words carried that familiar warmth and concern, unchanged over the years. Yet now I recognized it as pure fabrication, a meticulously crafted deception, a prospective client from elsewhere. He wasn't away. He was right here, at a luxury hotel with our daughter-in-law. I accessed my external drive and methodically stored each picture and recording. With every click to save, I studied the visuals, as if verifying they weren't some nightmare. In the footage, Julian's look at Allison brimmed with affection. The gentle stroke of her mane echoed how he'd touched mine over 3 decades past. We were youthful then, and I trusted our bond would endure eternally. Vows murmured beneath a starlit San Diego night. Confronting this now, I perceived only deceit and outright disloyalty. Recollections of holiday meals surfaced. The clan gathered round the dining area, painting a picture of our flawless household. Allison invariably kept distance from Julian. At times, she'd even glance his way with apparent aversion. Daniel would tease, "Mom, I swear Allison detests Dad. She steers clear of him like he's contagious." I bought into it myself. I figured they simply clashed, that she was just adjusting to our clan. But the truth dawned. It was all theater, a precisely staged performance of trickery. They played their roles flawlessly before me, before Daniel, before the entire community. I came across as an idiot, an oblivious spouse, deceived by a pair of betrayers under my very nose. Folks carried on with their routines, oblivious to the drama unfolding on that hotel ledge. Yet Mr. Thomas had snagged the ideal instant, like a stealthy observer, freezing my harsh truth. I responded to him, "Appreciate it. Keep tabs, please. I require full details." His reply was curt. "Understood. Hang in there." That evening, I headed back to the residence I'd shared with Julian for so long. It struck me as alien territory now, haunted by specters and falsehoods. I pulled open the bureau compartment and retrieved a sturdy folder, my movements fueled by a somber resolve. I outputted every piece of documentation, shots of Julian and Allison departing the attorney's building, shots I meticulously organized the snapshots of their arrival at the hotel, the shots of them on the terrace, and each segment of the footage. Once sorted, I sealed the package and tucked it away beneath a stack of faded family pictures in the drawer's depths. My gaze fell on an old snapshot featuring the 4 of us, Julian, Allison, Daniel, and myself, at Daniel's celebration a couple of years back. Allison beamed while clutching Daniel close, and Julian positioned himself next to me, his hand resting on my shoulder with a sense of accomplishment. Staring at it now, all I craved was to shred it apart, to erase those cheerful expressions from my existence forever. Just before daybreak the following day, the sound of the front entrance creaking open reached me. Julian stumbled inside, reeking of booze. "That client was a real pain, Juliet," he grumbled in a hoarse tone, his eyes bloodshot like he'd pulled an all-nighter. "I ended up knocking back quite a few. I'm utterly exhausted." There I stood in the kitchen, clutching a cup of water, observing his act while it stung like salt poured into an open cut. "Get some sleep," I responded evenly, slipping into my well-rehearsed spousal routine. "You've got obligations at the office come morning." He acknowledged with a nod, offered a casual tap on my arm as though everything were normal, and shuffled off toward the sleeping quarters. Soon after, his steady snores filled the air, undisturbed, as if he'd never strayed, as if he'd never slipped away to a lodging with his own son's spouse. Once I was certain Julian was out cold, my cell buzzed to life. It was the investigator, Mr. Thomas, on the line. He spoke in hushed tones, barely above a murmur, like he was dodging eavesdroppers. "Mrs. Roberts, I've captured their exchange in the hotel lot. Deployed some advanced gear. They had no clue. Uploading it your way right now." My pulse raced fiercely, yet I managed a steady, "Appreciate it, Thomas. Forward the recording." Moments passed, and the sound clip landed in my inbox. I slipped on my earpieces, settled at the counter, and hit the button to start. The initial sound was Allison's tone, icy and driven, belonging to someone unrecognizable. "Dad, speed things up on that phony deal. I need control of the entire shop network pronto. Get that withered crone booted from the place." A sharp pang hit my ribs, and I squeezed the device hard. Julian's reply followed, resonant and assured. "Relax on the documents. Juliet's clueless. I'll handle it. Her faith in me runs too deep." It pierced me like a blade turning inside. This went beyond mere infidelity. They schemed to seize every bit of what I'd constructed. The string of bakeries. Every drop of effort, every sob, every dawn without rest. Mixing each dough load myself, racing across the city for shipments to uphold my standing. It belonged to me alone. Julian had never soiled his hands with baking. He'd skipped the front desk and any packs with lodgings. Yet here, he and Allison plotted to claim it all, to evict me from the home I'd turned into a sanctuary. I nearly crumbled, but composure held as I transferred the clip onto the USB stick, holding the rest of the proof. With care, I jotted the timestamp and location, clinging to routine amid the chaos. The dawn after, while brewing coffee at the shop, my phone hummed once more. Thomas had dispatched fresh images, snapped via a long-range lens. They showed Julian and Allison huddled in his vehicle, surrounded by a hefty stack of files. Allison wielded a crimson marker, scrutinizing the sheets with focus. Beside her, Julian bobbed his head and grinned, signaling his buy-in. The message read, "Caught a snippet. Looks like they're tapping a link at the notary to push the handover, digging deeper." I magnified the image. The script on the sheets was visible, if illegible, but I recognized these weren't routine business docs. They aimed to pilfer my life's labor, inch by calculated inch. I lingered there, encircled by racks of aromatic treats that tempted the senses, yet it seemed my entire reality was crumbling. I replayed the recording, donned the headphones anew, and absorbed each utterance, each syllable they uttered. That miserable hag. That's the label Allison pinned on me. Memories flooded back of her early days in our fold. The times I guided her through rice prep, embraced her as kin. I'd envisioned her as one of us, the partner who'd team with Daniel to forge ahead. And Julian, the fellow I'd adored since my youth in San Diego, who vowed eternal loyalty. They'd turned me into the punchline, the dupe still clinging to notions of affection and kinship. A familiar patron entered then, Mrs. Peterson, who routinely picked up treats for her grandkids. "Juliet, your spot's buzzing these days. That empire of yours is growing. I couldn't be happier for you," she shared, her words kind and genuine. I mustered a grin and answered, "Thanks," giving it my all. But inwardly, I was shattered. I pondered her reaction to the reality. Would she view me as resilient or merely the idiot stabbed in the back by her partner and his offspring's wife? I packaged her order, bid her farewell from the threshold, and collapsed into the seat, cradling my face in my palms. Tears threatened, but none would fall. A quiet fury simmered within me, much like a furnace blaze poised to erupt. During that evening meal, I faced Julian in our compact kitchen, bathed in the amber glow that cast an eerie, warped shadow across his features. He chewed and chatted in a flat tone, acting as though all was fine, oblivious to the impending collapse looming over him. "Juliet, I've got some crucial business documents to sign this week. You might want to review them. They're tricky." I lifted a slice of bread and mimed nibbling it, yet my mind echoed only Allison's words from the tape. "Dad, just sign those phony agreements quick." Clearly he was probing me, aiming to pull me into his sordid scheme. I forced a bland grin, masking the exhaustion of a spouse too drained for confrontation, and said, "Sure, I'll check them out soon. I'm beat right now." He dipped his head in acknowledgement, sipped his wine, and gazed at me like everything was normal. Yet I recognized the truth. Concealed beneath that grin lurked a schemer, eager to seize all I'd created. A hunter biding time for the perfect attack. Julian downed several more glasses of wine. His cheeks flushed, and his speech grew muddled as he rambled about a troublesome customer from earlier. I bobbed my head, feigning interest, but inwardly I longed to shout, "Do you really see me as a fool?" As he rose unsteadily and shuffled to the bedroom, I tidied the table with deliberate slowness, bottling the rage churning within. He collapsed onto the mattress, emitting deep snores, and abandoned his car keys on the bedside table, where they shimmered faintly, beckoning like a lure to my retribution. I fixed my eyes on them, pulse racing. This was my opportunity, the instant I'd awaited. I slipped into the bedroom stealthily, avoiding any noise. Each footfall balanced torment and determination, bridging yesterday's wounds to an uncertain tomorrow. I snatched the keys, gripped them firmly, and headed directly to the garage. The evening hung still and muted, as if the universe itself paused in anticipation. Only the cricket's song pierced the silence, underscoring my muted wrath. I activated the flashlight on my phone. Its feeble beam revealed Julian's aging SUV, a mute partner in his disloyalty. I unlocked the door. The faint gasoline odor lingered, blended with an odd floral fragrance. I popped open the glove box between the seats, and there it lay, the lubricant tube, cap askew with crusty remnants along the rim, a stark emblem of their affair. Clutching it, I felt the weight of their concealed shame. Evidently, they'd resorted to it recently, solidifying that Julian and Allison persisted in their clandestine ritual, their devious tango. I carried the lubricant tube to the kitchen, set it on the surface, and lathered my hands with citrus-scented soap. I scoured them vigorously, as if purging every hint of the treachery I'd handled. The crisp aroma failed to soothe my ire, though it sharpened my resolve. From the utility drawer, I retrieved a vial of transparent industrial adhesive, the very type I'd employed to mend a stool at the shop. Once a practical item from my work, it now served as an instrument of reprisal. With precision, I twisted off the lubricant's cap and poured in the glue, droplet by droplet, until it brimmed full. I cleaned the tip, gave it a soft shake to blend, and squeezed out a trial amount. It flowed effortlessly, mimicking the genuine article. From afar, no discrepancy would show. A subtle smirk crossed my lips, even as turmoil stormed inside. This marked no mere prank. It signified the initial move toward reckoning. I returned the tube to the glove box, straightened the mat and cushion to their prior state, as if untouched, before securing the vehicle. I lifted the trunk lid for inspection. Inside sat wadded sacks, a discarded water flask, and a spare condom tucked in the shadows. My breath caught, yet shock had long faded. I snapped photos on my device, bolstering the mounting archive of proof. Every shot added to the puzzle, a stark alert that I mustn't allow Julian and Allison to escape their deceptions. Returning indoors, I restored the keys beside Julian's clock. I fetched a worn novel and settled on the couch in the den, feigning absorption in its lines. The soft illumination danced over the text, but not a single phrase registered. My thoughts whirled. I pictured Daniel, our boy, blissfully ensconced with Allison, ignorant of the reality. How might I reveal that his spouse and his father conspired against us? I reflected on the string of bakeries, the 4 decades of labor and restless evenings, the battles with Julian to safeguard my vision. He'd never fully grasped it, yet I'd believed in his backing. Now it was evident. He'd merely endured, plotting the opportune strike to claim it all. An hour passed before Julian roused and lurched to the kitchen for a drink. Spotting the keys on the counter, he remained clueless. "Can't sleep yet, Juliet," he mumbled drowsily. I offered a smile and answered, "Nope, just flipping through some pages. Down your water and head back to rest." He inclined his head. "D." He collapsed into bed after downing a drink, drifting off to sleep with loud snores right away. I stared at him like he was someone unfamiliar. This guy, who'd sworn to stick by me forever, was scheming to shatter the thing I cherished above all, yet he had no clue I'd already launched my retaliation. As the first light of day broke, I rose from bed. Gentle rays of sun filtered shyly through the window of my bakery. There I was in the familiar kitchen, working the dough vigorously, firing up the oven for fluffy, sugary treats destined for a major hotel shipment. I pounded the mixture with full force, pouring my fury into each knead. Back home for the morning meal, I forced a composed expression. Julian sat there clutching a mug of dark brew. I plated his scrambled eggs and slices of bread. "Julian," I mentioned evenly, "I've got a trip to Nashville lined up tomorrow for a deal with a fresh collaborator. Expect me home pretty late. Mind handling supper." I glanced at him sidelong. He lifted his gaze in mild shock, but what gleamed in those eyes wasn't worry. It was ease. "A major deal?" he inquired, grasping my fingers with fake warmth. "No stress. Head out. I've got this." Still, that flicker in his gaze, the subtle upturn of his mouth like a burden had vanished, stabbed right through me. He was eager for my absence, and I knew the real reason. I grinned and agreed. "Appreciate it. I'll ring if I'm delayed." He drank more coffee. Then he stood, claiming an early start at work. As he departed, I noticed his cell on the counter, buzzing with a skipped alert. The caller's name popped up, @ I creased my brow, my pulse raced. Allison Thomas, no doubt about it. Before I could reach for it, Julian rushed back, snatched the device hastily, and blanked the display before me. "Slipped my mind," he muttered with a strained grin. And off he went. I lingered, fixated on the shutting door, as though I'd taken a hit to the face. He wasn't even trying to conceal things now. That afternoon, I operated on autopilot, dropping off loaves, tallying receipts, and greeting patrons with feigned cheer. But my thoughts fixated solely on Julian and Allison. I refused to allow their deception to persist in secret, not with Daniel in the mix. I required solid proof, something to catch their unguarded words when they believed privacy was theirs. That evening, I acted exhausted. I retired early and informed Julian, "Gotta rise at dawn for the bus, so lights out for me." He acknowledged with a shoulder tap. "Get some shut-eye, Juliet. Safe travels tomorrow." I settled in and shut my lids, though I tuned my ears sharply to the home's every noise. Around midnight, once his rumbling ceased, I caught him slipping from the sheets without a sound. His phone's glow pierced the gloom. He slipped out of the room with it, assuming I was out cold. I remained motionless, heart thumping hard. Gradually, I eased up and trailed him silently on soft feet. I concealed myself behind the heavy drapes in the lounge and spotted him in a shadowy spot by the pane. He pressed the gadget to his head and murmured low, "Sure thing. Swing by the place tomorrow. No need for a motel this time. Juliet's heading out of town for that agreement and won't return till late." A light chuckle echoed back. Allison's sugary tone. "Perfect, Daddy. At last we can unwind." Julian chuckled in response. "Right, arrive soon. I'll be ready." Frozen behind the fabric, I felt rage surging through my veins. This went beyond mere infidelity. They aimed to convert our home, Daniel's sanctuary, my own, into their rendezvous spot. I glided back to the sleeping quarters quietly, pulled open a compartment, and retrieved Daniel's vintage voice recorder, the one I'd gotten for his university lectures. I tested the power source, swapped in a fresh battery, and activated endless mode. I tucked it away beside the bed's edge behind the bookcase, confident it'd snag every detail. I neatly positioned the wire and draped a family picture over it. The snapshot from Daniel and Allison's ceremony, all four of us beaming. Gazing at it stirred a sour pang. Allison's grin, Julian's embrace, all fabrications now. Prior to slipping under the covers, I verified the device's function once more. I aligned the frame precisely to mask the line. Then I reclined, feigning slumber. Julian re-entered the space, flopped onto the mattress, and resumed his oblivious rumbling. Yet in the pitch black, my stare was alert, sharper than ever. I groped for the timer and adjusted it ahead of the norm. I sealed my eyes not for rest. My scheme's following phase awaited. I stirred at 5 a.m., while shadows still cloaked everything. Just the dim glow from outside lamps seeped in. The residence lay hushed. Julian's rhythmic breaths droned from the other room. In the cooking area, I gripped a mug of chilled Java, eyes locked on the pan of fat heating atop the burner. This marked the scheme's final touch, a basic haze diversion, yet potent enough to unveil the reality. I fastened a slender cord to the stove starter. I rushed the setup to the window and secured it to a sturdy item, an outdated coffee tin I spotted in the cupboard. From afar, I'd just tug it, and the spark would set the oil ablaze, producing dense, dark fumes potent enough to alert everyone nearby. I cracked open the window near the range so the haze could escape. I gave it a single trial run. The plume ascended fast, twisting into coils like a distress beacon. I doused it right away, double-checked all the details, and ensured nothing would tip off Julian. Slipping into a coat, I snatched my oversized bag and acted like I was heading out for my journey. Prior to departing, I stepped into the bedroom and softly nudged Julian awake. "I need to head to the bus depot immediately," I told him steadily. "Contract signing awaits. I might return quite late." He blinked open his eyes and mumbled drowsily, "Okay, stay safe, Juliet. Reach out if anything comes up." With that, he pressed his face into the cushion and drifted off again. I gazed at the person I'd once adored and relied on. Now sprawled there, oblivious to the snare ahead, I averted my gaze, chest weighed down, yet steps firm. Rather than the depot, I crossed over to Mrs. Peterson's place, my neighbor and confidant. She swung the door wide, concern etching her features at the sight of my bag. "Juliet, why are you out so soon? Trouble brewing?" she inquired warmly. I mustered a grin. "Mrs. Peterson, mind if I hang out here briefly? I've got to keep an eye on my home." Her brow furrowed, but she held her tongue. She fixed me a steaming mug of joe and positioned a seat near the pane. From that vantage, I had a clear view of the doorway where Julian and Allison would slip in, and where reality would unravel. By 10 CU, a cab rolled up to the curb. Allison stepped out in a breezy, patterned frock and shaded lenses, as though dodging recognition. Julian flung the door ajar, scanned about hastily, and hustled her within. I clutched my mug hard, pulse racing wildly. "Showtime," I whispered, firing up the phone app linked to the concealed mic I'd planted in the sleeping quarters. Audio filtered into my earpieces. Allison's giggles, the tinkle of stemware, thudding paces. Next came Julian's resonant tone. "No more sneaking into motels. We're free." Allison chuckled. "You sure pick dramatic timings. The battle axe is away, yeah." I clamped my mouth shut, stifling fury at her scornful label for me. Soon the mattress groaned amid noises I refused to endure further. I shut my lids, inhaled deeply, and coached myself. "Hold on a bit more, Juliet. Just a tad longer." Moments passed, then Allison yelped, "What's this crap? We're glued down." Panic laced her cry, verging on tears. Julian snapped, "Quiet. Hold on, I'll check." A grin crept over me. With a light tap on my device, I triggered the haze device from afar. The cord yanked taut. The burner flared. The pan's grease erupted in flames. Dark vapors surged from the cooking area vent, coiling outward in heavy whirls, broadcasting like a siren. Mrs. Peterson inhaled sharply, peering outside. "Juliet, flames at your place." I feigned alarm, though inwardly a peculiar peace reigned. Folks from the block emerged into their lawns, hollering, "Fire at Juliet's! Summon the brigade!" Nearby, Mr. Miller whipped out his cell and dialed the local emergency line without delay. I remained seated, gripping my brew, stare locked on the residents. The scheme unfolded flawlessly. Through the buds, Allison's pleas grew frantic. "Julian, fix this, I'm pinned." He bellowed back, "Stop yelling, I'm working on it." But I recognized their futility. The heavy-duty adhesive I'd substituted was doing its job, binding them in their most degrading instant. I pictured their frantic wriggles terror-stricken, and a thrill of vindication washed over me. Not from malice, but retribution. They'd driven me here, scheming to seize my shop, my kin, my dignity. Now payback loomed. I glanced outward. The fumes kept climbing, ever denser. The crowd gathered, voices rising in chaos. "What's the deal?" one wondered. "Juliet's away on business, I reckon," another chimed. Mrs. Peterson beside me eyed me dubiously yet stayed silent, merely clasping my fingers softly. I sensed her inkling, but no words were due. Revelation neared, and I braced for it. Mere 10 minutes on, a fire engine's wail pierced the avenue's end like a fatal knell. The crimson rig accelerated, braking sharply before my abode. I watched Daniel leap from the wheel in his chief's gear, expression strained. My boy barked commandingly. "Gear up fast, there might be folks inside," he said. I gazed at him, a stab of agony twisting in my chest. My boy, forever beaming with pride over his kin and his folks. Now he was on the verge of confronting the harshest reality imaginable. I longed to dash over, envelop him in my arms, and whisper, "Forgive me, Daniel." Yet I had no alternative. I remained rooted in place, allowing events to unfold as they would. Thick plumes of smoke kept billowing from the kitchen, convincing Daniel and his crew that a major blaze was raging. My son charged ahead, wielding a sledgehammer to smash through the front entrance. The crack of shattering timber reverberated through the night. His colleagues trailed behind, gripping hoses and fire extinguishers. From the bedroom, I caught the chaos unfolding, Julian's frantic yells intertwined with Allison's wrenching cries. "Do something," Julian urged. "I can't budge," she whimpered. "Quiet down, stop yelling," he snarled. I pressed my lips together tightly, clutching the phone that was still relaying sounds from the concealed mic app. They were cornered, powerless, exactly as I'd planned. Daniel burst into the bedroom, and I could picture the scene he stumbled upon. His dad and his spouse, bare and fused together atop the mattress, their expressions drained of color, etched with agony and terror. Though I wasn't present, my earbuds captured Daniel's voice cracking, "What's going on? What the hell is this?" A colleague nearby gasped, "Oh man," yet another stifled a jittery chuckle, only for Daniel to bark, "Quiet." That command wasn't merely for discipline, it was my son's final, desperate bid to mask his heartbreak. The shame had spilled out, not only for Daniel, but for his entire squad and the whole community. One of the firefighters dashed outside and informed Daniel, "Captain, we've got the smoke handled. Just a minor grease blaze. No big deal." But Daniel stayed silent. I imagined the kid was rooted in the bedroom, paralyzed by the sight. Neighbors began milling about, clustering by the doorway, gesturing and murmuring. "What's the deal?" "It's Julian and his son's wife," a lady called out, her tone laced with shock. "Heavens, how did that even occur?" someone else added. Mrs. Peterson, right beside me, pulled out her cell and began filming quietly, zooming in on Julian and Allison as they twisted on the sheets, features twisted in torment. She shot me a glance brimming with sympathy and fury. "Juliet, you were aware of this, right?" I offered no response, merely dipping my head faintly, my stare fixed on the window. Daniel emerged from the room. I heard the heavy stomp of his boots across the polished floors. Over the headphones, Julian's hoarse bellow rang out, "Clear the place! Shut that door, Daniel!" But the damage was done. The entire block had assembled, expressions twisted in contempt, their hushed words forming a symphony of disgrace. In-law and daughter-in-law exposed mid-act. Incredible, a guy muttered. That poor Juliet. Whatever led to this mess? Another lamented. The team, after a brief pause, sprang into action. They draped blankets over Julian and Allison, attempting to shield their adhered forms, then hoisted them onto gurneys. Allison's shattered weeping blended with her pained moans. "Help us, please. This is unbearable." Julian only muttered faintly, "Keep us hidden from view." But everyone in the vicinity had witnessed it already. Revulsion flickered in their eyes, snickers erupted, and heads shook in dismay. They were wheeled away, shrouded in a flimsy coverlet amid the swelling chatter. Such a scandal, in-law and daughter-in-law, Lord, so vile. The throng lingered at the threshold as the ambulance sped off, lights flashing and siren wailing. Amid the rising clamor, I caught peals of laughter. "Some spectacle," Mr. Miller hollered. "Hard to fathom such brazen folks exist." An elderly lady wagged her head and confided to her companion, "That Juliet, so unfortunate." I blended into the crowd, feigning astonishment as though I'd just hurried over from the transit stop. Daniel lingered statue still in the driveway, limbs limp, complexion ashen like a specter. His crew steered clear of his gaze, methodically packing up their gear in silence. I realized Daniel's stun went beyond the image of his father and wife locked in intimacy on the bed. It stemmed from the profound treachery by the pair he cherished above all. I ached to sprint to him, embrace him, and murmur apologies for exposing him to such horror. But I restrained myself and trailed after Mrs. Peterson, who wordlessly guided me to the medical center. We waited in the corridor on the 3rd level, my expression one of a spouse newly apprised of her home aflame. Much later, a physician appeared, beads of perspiration on his brow. He met my eyes and murmured softly, "Mrs. Roberts, we've succeeded in parting them. No major harm done, thankfully. A bit of salve for the skin will suffice." I inclined my head, simulating relief, as my fingers subtly grazed my handbag, where I'd stashed 2 jars of dense mustard paste I'd readied earlier. "Appreciate it, doctor," I replied, my tone quivering to conceal my schemes. "May I take a look?" He agreed with a nod and guided me over to the nursing desk, where they handed me a pair of ointment tubes. The nurse, a youthful lady, gazed at me with deep sympathy. "Ma'am, this is truly a tough ordeal. My deepest condolences." I managed a faint grin, and the instant she spun away, I exchanged those tubes for the mustard tucked in my handbag. My fingers worked swiftly and assuredly, like I'd practiced the move endlessly in my mind. I stepped into the hospital chamber holding the mustard tube, pretending worry. "Julian, Allison, everything all right?" Allison lay in the bed, her locks disheveled, cheeks flushed from tears, avoiding my stare. Julian, face still ashen, muttered, "Juliet, I can make sense of it." Yet I silenced him before he could go on. I set the mustard tube down on the bedside stand and departed. Shortly after, a piercing wail echoed from inside. Allison clutched her face, sobbing. "It stings so bad. My flesh feels like it's blazing." Julian twisted in agony on the mattress, swearing, "What in God's name is this stuff? Who's behind it?" Chaos erupted down the corridor. Folks in nearby rooms and their kin poked heads out to gawk. An elderly lady murmured to her boy, "That's the pair, the ones from that clip circulating online this morning, the stepdad and his stepdaughter. Such a scandal." Someone else chimed in, "They had it coming." The physician dashed in, instructing the staff to rinse their skin and dab on a soothing balm. But the shame engulfing Julian and Allison had already gone viral, beyond containment. Mrs. Peterson's footage of them being wheeled out on gurneys had buzzed across the community and platforms like wildfire. I lingered in the passage, eavesdropping on the whispers, sensing the universe bearing witness to the collapse of that deceitful duo. As the throng thinned, Daniel arrived carrying a hefty dossier. I'd phoned him the second the sirens faded, urging him to fetch the dossier of proofs stashed in the cabinet, plus the pair of divorce forms I'd prepped. He passed it over, his expression blank, uttering nothing. I flipped it open, extracted the papers, and laid them before Julian and Allison on the surface. I met his eyes squarely, tone icy, yet resolute. Our 40 years together conclude now. Put your signatures here, then pursue whatever path suits you. Just vanish from my boy's world and mine. Allison crumpled, weeping, pleading with Daniel. Darling, pardon me. It was a grave error. I'm imploring you. Show mercy. Daniel merely regarded her, eyes like flint, and exited in silence. Julian reached for my arm, voice quivering. Juliet, hear me out. This wasn't my intention. I withdrew sharply, halting him. No more words, Julian. You forged your own fate. He bellowed in anguish. Juliet, I beg you. But the nurse bustled in, cautioning, Hush now, remember this is medical grounds. I pivoted and strode off, eyes forward. Out in the hall, Daniel slumped against the partition, face buried in palms. I approached, resting my palm on his back, though he kept his head down. Mom, he breathed, voice fractured. Why father? Why of all people her? I stayed mute. Instead, I enveloped him in a fierce embrace, our sorrows intertwining. Right then, it hit me. Julian and Allison had forfeited it all, their dignity, their union, that sordid scheme. Yet Daniel and I had forfeited a household too. I clung to hope that eventually serenity would come. Weeks post-fiasco, my pastry shop hummed with unprecedented activity. The entry chime tinkled non-stop. Patrons streamed through, beaming praises. Juliet, your resilience is inspiring, Mrs. Peterson remarked, clutching a sack of warm custard tarts. Everyone around here admires how you safeguarded your livelihood amid that mess. I beamed back and expressed gratitude. The community rallied behind me. They dubbed me unbreakable, though deep down I recognized that fortitude stemmed from my shattered spirit. Whenever I eyed the kiln where I'd toiled with perspiration and grief across 4 decades, visions of Julian and Allison surfaced. Those who schemed to strip me bare but fell short. Here I remain, bakery intact, Daniel by my side, embracing fresh beginnings. Daniel settled with me soon after the incident. He rarely broached the subject, but the shift was evident. Gone was the jovial, ever-grinning Daniel of old. His gaze now held profound shadows, harboring an ache that lingered. Mom, I'll bunk here a while, he shared that initial evening, lugging his bag inside. Count me in for bakery duties, chatting with folks, anything to lend a hand. I drew him close. The glow of the child I'd nurtured warmed me, so I simply inclined my head, questions unspoken. Time was what Daniel craved, and I shared that need. Dawn brought us both to unlock the doors. I'd fire up the heaters and organize the pans, while Daniel scanned bills and rang up eateries and inns. Mom, the Grand Hotel's bumping up their dessert request for the coming week, he announced from behind the till, tone steady but dimmed. Got it, I answered. Seal the deal. From the lineup, I'll whip up extra batter. Those quiet times brought me a calm I hadn't known in ages. No longer did I face Julian's phony glances or Allison's cloying, scheming tone. It was simply Daniel and me, nurturing what remained between us. Our evenings now featured just the pair of us. We'd perch across from each other in the cozy kitchen, savoring basic dishes. At times, it was rice paired with beans and poultry. Other evenings, merely toast alongside coffee. Mom, how about whipping up some flan for me this weekend? He inquired one evening, flashing a subtle grin, the initial one since the uproar. Sure, I answered, a wave of ease washing over me, though you'll need to assist with mixing the syrup. He agreed with a nod. Right then, I sensed we were gradually piecing ourselves back together. I began carving out moments for my own sake, a rarity throughout my 4 decades. I signed up for a baking group at the local community hub, where folks my age swapped formulas and shared their tales. "Juliet, your flan is unbeatable around here," one lady remarked with a chuckle as I presented a platter. I beamed back. "It's a neat tip I picked up long ago in San Diego." I also took to attending services on Sundays. I'd settle into the quiet, sunlight filtering through the colorful panes onto my features, offering prayers, not for Julian or Allison, but for Daniel, for me, so we'd muster the resilience to press on. Now and then, I'd stroll the plaza with Mrs. Peterson, absorbing her chatter on local buzz. "Listen, Juliet," she'd confide, eyes aglow. "Folks are still buzzing about Julian and Allison, yet word is you're the true victor." I'd offer a quiet smile, staying silent. Maybe I did triumph. Though the cost had been my entire household. Daniel, too, began to shift. He grew less withdrawn and started opening up about his role as a fireman. "We tackled a blaze at the marketplace last evening," he shared over supper one night. "It got pretty risky, Mom." Fortunately, everyone emerged unscathed. I hung on his words, my chest swelling with admiration. "Just promise to stay safe," I urged, my tone quivering. "You're my only anchor now." Daniel gazed at me warmly. "Relax, Mom. I won't ever abandon you." Those assurances acted like a balm. They restored my belief that, despite the vast losses, I retained my boy, steadfast by my side. One afternoon, amid a rush of patrons at the shop, I lingered by the till, observing the bustle outside. The entry chime sounded endlessly. The aroma of fresh rolls wafted everywhere. Gazing at the shelves of custard and baked goods, I reflected on the full path I'd traveled. I'd erected this spot with my bare effort, from a young woman in San Diego to someone versed in resilience. Julian and Allison had schemed to strip it all away, yet they fell short. I held on to my shop, I held on to Daniel, and above all, I held on to who I am, enjoyed my tale. And from what town are you tuning in? Drop by in the comments to connect. If the narrative resonated, consider backing me with super thanks to fuel more tales like this. Grateful for your kind backing, eager for your thoughts on it below. Check the display for 2 fresh personal accounts I truly suggest. Tons more awaits on my page. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Catch you for the upcoming tale. Warmly and respectfully.